Well, happy December 21st to you, wherever you may be. We're heading into this solstice now, the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere, as we call it. I suppose that would be the opposite down south. So, the Christian religion seems to be based upon the northern hemisphere for placing the story of the birth of one Jesus Christ on the day of the resurrection of the sun god in the traditions of those who keep track of the solar and lunar and stellar issues, which have pretty much defined religion from time immemorial. So at this time, what I'd like to do actually is take a look at LDS scripture and prophecy that warn of secret combinations. Relate that to Donald Trump and the Russia investigation, the FBI stuff, and the Obama administration influencing the FBI, Hillary Clinton, and so forth. All these things that are currently occurring and relate to prophecies and warnings we've been given by prophets who are sometimes considered as just old fuddy-duddies now, it seems, like Ezra Taft Benson, for instance, as we kind of focus on him here in the upper left. Ezra gave us some very specific warnings as an apostle and as a prophet, seer, and revelator and president of the LDS Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Are we heeding those warnings, or is he just an old fuddy-duddy? Have we been conditioned by the media and now even by the church to look at him and say, "Oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist, Ezra. You're not guided by the Holy Spirit. You don't have the spirit of prophecy and revelation. You're just letting those John Birch Society people around you influence you. That's what it is. Maybe you're just a nutcase, Ezra." Can the Lord actually allow a nutcase to be guiding his church? Or should we actually be paying attention to the words not only of Ezra Taft Benson, but those that he emphasized and brought out from the Book of Mormon, which, of course, is supposed to be the keystone of the religion? What should we be looking for in modern days if we have indeed secret combinations with their secret signs of the all-seeing eye, or the 666, or the horns that Hillary loves to throw, as does Obama, and as did a missionary I spoke with yesterday? I think the young fellow was probably completely unaware of what he was doing. Perhaps there's some popular meaning being ascribed to it, like, "Hey, you're victorious." Now that we see people like Bryce Harper from the Washington, D.C. Nationals baseball team throwing the horns when he hits a home run, and having the television networks show that over and over and over again as they promoted a baseball game that was going to feature that particular team. Yeah, we see popularized, we see signs and signals or tokens possibly found in the occult and Satanism being popularized under other labels in our day. So anyway, I want to check out a few words of Ezra Taft Benson on YouTube. You know, he was a big YouTuber, right? Well, somebody managed to throw some of his things on, and I think it's worth reviewing, because perhaps we have been lulled to sleep by our media and leaders, as Ezra told us we were. Either that, or he's just an old fuddy-duddy conspiracy theorist that the Lord let run the church. You figure that one out, huh? All right, let's go. Let's check this one first here.
Joseph Smith said that the Book of Mormon was the keystone of our religion and the most correct book on earth. This most correct book on earth states that the downfall of two great American civilizations came as a result of secret conspiracies whose desire was to overthrow the freedom of the people. And they have caused the destruction of this people of whom I am now speaking, says Moroni, and also the destruction of the people of Nephi. Now, undoubtedly, Moroni could have pointed out many factors that led to the destruction of the people. But notice how he singled out the secret combinations, just as the church today could point out many threats to peace, prosperity, and the spread of God's work. But it has singled out the greatest threat as the great conspiracy. There is no conspiracy theory in the Book of Mormon. It is a conspiracy fact. And along this line, I would highly recommend to you a new book entitled None Dare Call It, Conspiracy by Gary Allen. Then Moroni speaks to us in this day and says, Wherefore the Lord commandeth you, when ye shall see these things come among you, that ye shall awake to a sense of your awful situation, because this secret combination which shall be among you. The Book of Mormon further warns that whatever nation shall uphold such secret combinations to get power and gain until they shall spread over the nation, behold, they shall be destroyed.
All right.
Secret combinations, lusting for power, gain, and glory, are flourishing. A secret combination that seeks to overthrow the freedom of all lands, nations, and countries is increasing its evil influence and control over America and the entire world.
Okay. Well, how about that? Sorry for that. I'm going to avoid, pardon that. I am trying to avoid editing, however, in this particular video due to phone memory and similar concerns. So if you'll bear with a slight inconvenience here and there, I'll be trying to bring you important information. So have the brethren gone silent on something that Moroni spoke of in the Book of Mormon as being extremely important for us to awake to our to a sense of our awful situation as he speaks to us in Ether chapter 8? Well, either the Book of Mormon is true or it's not true. And either things that are in it are true or they are not. And those two statements could possibly be independent of each other as well. Now, couldn't they? However, if we relate our current news that some of us wake up to, perhaps you wake up to hearing Donald Trump tweets or commentary on them from 666 Fox News. I'm just simply relating the numerical relationship there, if you are aware of how to do that with the FOX. So we see Donald Trump using signs and gestures that people who study these things are aware have certain meanings. We see Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, the Queen, George W. Bush, so many others using these particular hand signs that I just mentioned, and we see scandal rocking American politics. It seems that it's at a feverish pace now. We've got the FBI filled with people from the Obama administration or sympathizers that it sounds, at least on Fox News, are really trying to sabotage a presidency of Donald J. Trump simply because he's from another political party? Is that what America is supposed to be built upon? Upon espionage and secret agreements and that sort of a thing? We see the news talking about Donald Trump possibly colluding with the evil Russians to sabotage the American political process of democratic representation. We see people, even Gordon B. Hinckley, talking like a liberal journalist, using the word democracy for the United States of America, when certainly he knows it was set up as a republic, not as a democracy. And that the people that tend to call it a democracy are those who are advocating for the destruction of freedom generally. We see what appears to have been, under Director Comey in the FBI, probably an ignoring, if not a cover-up, of what was going on with the emails with Hillary Clinton. At least, that's the way it sounds. It sounds like the Justice Department as well was not eager to classify what she had done as something as serious as many others feel that it has been. Why do we have these things going on? What are they indicating? And now we say, if Donald Trump was colluding with the Russians to do some terrible thing so that the American people's will would be somehow affected by these evil communists, what evil effect did they have? Did they help WikiLeaks share information about how corrupt Hillary Clinton was? Is that really a bad thing, to expose the wickedness and corruption of a politician? I mean, what was the harm and what was the crime that was done by all this supposed collusion? If it has to do with exposing the wickedness within the system and the individuals who are carrying on this corrupt business that the Clintons are well known for, especially in those who have studied many of their actions, whether it be from Chinagate to helping trafficking cocaine in Arkansas in collusion with George H.W. Bush. These people are much, much more evil than anything they have been accused of on the national news. At least that's talked about on the major networks. Anything else is, thrown out as non-credible conspiracy theory, right-wing insanity. But these tactics that are being used by the news networks, whether it's CNN, MSNBC, or on the other, on what pretends to be the other side, although run by a family, whose chieftain there is a Bilderberger. Okay, so we're talking about News Corp, all right, and which owns Fox News. So we're talking about Rupert Murdoch and then his successors. Does that really represent freedom? Since when do the Bilderbergers represent freedom? What we find is when we look upwards, we find that what appears to be animosity oftentimes is really feigned, and that these people that appear to be arch enemies in political positions as they are candidates running against each other from the Democrat and the Republican parties turn out to be the best of buddies hanging out in the Council on Foreign Relations and working for, globalization like Jimmy Carter and George Bush Sr. and Bill Clinton. So how is it that we are so easily led to believe that the things that are being told on television are actually true? And why is it that the LDS leaders have stopped sounding the alarm against this sort of thing?
We have permitted ourselves to become encircled in its tentacles. Though we gave lip service to the Monroe Doctrine, this has not prevented Cuba from becoming a Soviet military base 90 miles off our coastline, nor has it prevented the takeover of Nicaragua in Central America, the surrender of the Panama Canal, or the infiltration by enemy agents within our American borders.
Thanks, Ezra. I always think it's pretty interesting when we look at Cuba and we see that we had that pathetic excuse for an invasion called the Bay of Pigs, and we've had economic trade sanctions against Cuba for many years now, as though they are arch enemies, but somehow the United States has a military base there, Guantanamo Bay. How do you have a military base on a place that's your enemy where you had a failed invasion? Is something, does anyone see any red flags here? Let's start at the beginning for just a moment to see what Ezra has to say, and then I want to talk about some other things, some videos that I've produced, and exactly what they're about.
The Lord has declared this a day of warning and not a day of many words. My message is a witness and warning about some of the evils which threaten America, a land I love with all my heart. There are other countries with this same problem. You have seen these dangers in the land you love, will have a deep feeling for what I say. America is a place of many great events. Here is where Adam dwelt, where the Garden of Eden was located. America was the place of farmer civilizations, including Adam's, the Jebusites, and Nephites. America is also the place where God the Father and his Son, Jesus Christ, appeared to Joseph Smith, inaugurating the last gospel dispensation on earth before the Savior's second coming. This consecrated land has been placed under the everlasting decree of God. That decree is recorded in the sacred Book of Mormon, a new witness for Christ, in these words: For behold, this is a land which is choice above all other lands. Wherefore, he that doth possess it shall serve God or shall be swept off. For it is the everlasting decree of God. Behold, this is a choice land. And whatsoever nation shall possess it shall be free from bondage, and from captivity, and from all other nations under heaven, if they will but serve the God of the land, who is Jesus Christ.
Okay, so that's interesting, Ezra. What land were they talking about there? Were they talking about North and South America? Or does the Book of Mormon just happen to be confined to the boundaries of the United States of America Company? Because do we not have tyranny recognized even to this day under heavily socialist, if not communist regimes? Do we not find America itself underneath the thumb of incredibly oppressive bureaucracy? What about Bolivia? What about Venezuela? What about Nicaragua? Was Cuba not included as well? What about these nation states that do have captivity as recognized by President Benson right there? Is he saying that the Book of Mormon words are applying to the geographic boundaries of the United States of America? When the Sandinistas and the Cubans had the revolution in Nicaragua, doesn't that represent the type of thing that he just said would not take place on this land? It seems like so many things are in flux and changing from what we are told in the scriptures. The Gospel Topics essays say that on LDS.org, with the approval of the first presidency, that the descendants of Lehi were not necessarily the only occupants or even the predominant occupants of the Americas. However, the Book of Mormon, as we know, and as I've pointed out in other videos on that subject particularly, clearly state that to be the case, that the Lord would protect the land from the knowledge of other nations so that the other nations would not overrun it, and so that it would actually be a land for the seed of Lehi to possess unto themselves. Well, since that was supposedly said long after the people who obviously migrated from Siberia thousands and thousands of years before Adam existed and were not washed away by the flood of Noah, as Jeffrey Holland seemed to indicate or reaffirm for us in his 1976 article in the Ensign called A Promised Land, which he was fully justified in stating based on what's in the Book of Mormon, and really indicates that, as well as other LDS scripture. Why is it we have the rhetoric from the brethren now mimicking what we find on the news that Ezra Taft Benson condemns? Is there something a little suspicious about this? Let's go on just a little bit more with Ezra.
The eventful destiny of America has also been revealed to God's prophets. To Joseph Smith, the Lord revealed that the whole of America is Zion itself, from north to south. Further,
Okay, so that really doesn't work too well with the whole people under bondage in communist countries, now does it?
the Lord decreed this land to be the place of the New Jerusalem, which should come down out of heaven, the holy sanctuary of the Lord. To serve God's eternal purposes and to prepare this land for Zion, God established the constitution of this land by the hands of wise men whom he raised up, and redeemed the land by the shedding of blood.
Wow, that's a good one. Redeemed the land by the shedding of blood. While there has been a lot of bloodshed, the American Indians were, well, in some places, they say somewhere between 50 and 90% of the way wiped out. Was shedding their blood really necessary to make the land free? Was it? Or is he talking about war with Great Britain, now our closest ally? When we look at the silence of the brethren and actually their apparent collusion with U.S. leaders of mass murder, we have to ask ourselves, what's with the secret combinations, their signs, yea, their secret signs, which seem to be used between LDS leaders like Gordon B. Hinckley and Dick Cheney here, exchanging a Masonic grip that may look awfully familiar to members of the church, as well as Thomas Monson and George Bush doing the same thing. Maybe Thomas just asked George to scratch the inside of his wrist. Do you think that was it? There are apologists that might jump through enough hoops and perform enough mental gymnastics to say that, yes, Thomas said, please just scratch the inside of my wrist, and maybe that's what was going on between Gordon and Dick Cheney as well. Do you think so? Are you buying it? Why would these guys be exchanging Masonic grips? Why would they? Who owns the corporation of the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? Have you ever thought about that? Because whoever has the most votes, whether it be a combination of the many votes that a preferred share might have versus just having a whole bunch of regular shares of a corporation, that's who controls the board of directors and the policies, and in this case, what the word of the Lord is. That's right. We've heard so much about what is real doctrine. What is doctrine? The Doctrine and Covenants told us. In the Doctrine and Covenants, we see, thou shalt give heed unto all his words in section 21. Now, we've seen, whether by the voice of my own voice or the voice of my servants, it is the same in section 1. Yet, we need to hear that something is actually doctrine from our corporate leaders now, for it to be truly doctrine. We've seen Brigham Young's words denigrated since the time of Spencer Kimball especially. Spencer Kimball said that Adam is not God, as Brigham taught. Spencer Kimball disavowed the blood atonement doctrine. Both of these are ancient doctrines taught in the mystery schools, which apparently Brigham Young was familiar with, being a Freemason. Freemasonry and secret combinations are practically one and the same subject. In fact, you can't talk about one without talking about the other, and be honest. Now, what is it that the leaders of the LDS Church have in common here with the leaders of political parties, business, really big business, like, let's say, Halliburton, which prosper when the United States is at war, profit from murder, profiting, prophets helping their Masonic brethren profit? This sounds an awful lot like what the Book of Mormon says. The Book of Mormon has a lot of 19th century contemporary issues in it, but that's just a coincidence, nothing to worry about, even though they do mention them being dated from times of old, especially in Moses chapter 5, where we talk about a secret combination that sounds a whole lot like illuminated Freemasonry. So I've made some videos that discuss corporate governance and the role that the brethren may be playing with their buddies they're networked with at the top of banking, politics, and other large corporate enterprises, including, like I said, the privately held and owned companies called cities, states, counties, pension funds, and countries. Sound a little bit too much and too far-fetched? See what I've got there as we look at the comprehensive annual financial reports which bear the proof of this, which I have taken excerpts from a particular other video called Corporation Nation, which you may also want to view, though it's it's 3 hours and 13 minutes. You don't have to eat it all in one bite, and it's filled with information, but I've actually got some very important excerpts from it in the stuff that I've done, which link the LDS leaders to the New World Order, which, I might add, is pretty logical considering the church appears to have joined the World Council of Churches in 2013. Ezra Taft Benson would be rolling in his grave. Perhaps he is. Although, some say they sacrificed him below the Salt Lake Temple. Hey, that's just wild conspiracy theory, right? Isn't it? These people aren't actually involved in satanic ritual abuse, are they? Even though Bishop Glenn L. Pace of the presiding bishopric said that they were in his memo. Did he name individuals that he had interviewed? He interviewed many people who were subjected to satanic ritual abuse by leaders of the church. I doubt if we got to see who they were in his report. They quickly got rid of him and sent him somewhere else, I think, didn't they? Maybe on a mission. Why would they do such a thing? Kind of like getting him out of the limelight, like they did with Paul H. Dunn, turned him into a emeritus general authority, and then he just died, like going in for like something, completely non-threatening. Goes into the hospital and life ends shortly thereafter. Funny how that happens, isn't it? Nothing to worry about, just a coincidence. It happens all the time. But look who it happens to. Yeah. I just redid a video. Actually, I did one and added some other stuff I'd done a long time ago on the first vision. And I've responded to Scott Gordon's apologetics for the Freemasons here in a 5-video series, where he really tries to alter our view of Freemasonry and the relationship between Freemasonry and the church, especially within the endowment. Scott was extremely dishonest. Why do we need to cover up, Scott? Why do we have so much mind control technology used in the church, limiting information and controlling behavior, especially of missionaries? Why are so many things not making sense for an all-knowing, unchanging God to be guiding the LDS church? Why do we have to jump through so many forms of mental gymnastics in order to make things seem like they're okay? Whether it's with the ridiculous word of wisdom, which outlaws green tea. Drinkers of tea are just, unworthy for the temple, but you can guzzle Coca-Cola, no problem. There was a time, I believe, when caffeinated was an issue, but now, for some reason, it's not. So many things just don't make sense. We have to say that Brigham Young was uninspired in so many things that he said. Yet how can he be a true prophet if he is prophesying, or if he is teaching as a prophet, seer, and revelator, is revealing and teaching things which are not true? Deuteronomy says that a true prophet must prophesy truly. Listen to a revelator or a seer reveal true principles rather than what we find the brethren saying about blood atonement, Adam God doctrine, or the curse of Cain. We find disavowal that a skin of blackness is a sign of divine disfavor or a curse, right in the Gospel Topics essay on race and priesthood, which obviously ignores the fact that LDS scriptures clearly state that it is, as I show in that particular video. Actually, I've done several videos on that. So here we have one called Overview and Excerpts from the LDS Illuminated Corporate Governance. The 3 videos, they come out to, close to 5.5 hours, and a lot of people aren't willing to just jump in and invest that kind of time in something that they're not really aware of. So I'm going to do a little overview here. It's going to involve the videos I will show right now. Since I'm going live, I'll just take a peek here and show what they are really quickly. Looking in here at my YouTube lineup, and we got these 3 here. So the title on here is LDS General Conference, Illuminated Masonic Mind Control and Corporate Governance. bunch of loaded terms in there, so I'll do a quick explanation on that. A lot of people are aware that mind control exists, coercive persuasion, whatever you want to call it, and many of us realize that there are certain cult groups like Heaven's Gate or the Moonies and Scientology that are pretty well noted for using mind control techniques. Some of us are aware of that being used in the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, the Jehovah's Witnesses, and some of us are aware of its use in a much larger scale in society and heavily through the media. Many of us have no idea what it even means and think it's something out of the movies or something where someone is almost robotic necessarily, rather than someone that appears to be living a normal life. And so the way that media influences us is much it's much greater than most people have any idea. There are a lot of sciences involved with the arts of persuasion, and so in this video, or trilogy actually, we take a look at aspects of mind control being used in the LDS church. And for me it was a shocker because I know something of mind control, and when I noticed it being used in the church, I was rather shocked. At any rate, the other thing is corporate governance, that very few people are aware of the meaning of what that is, so I'm going to touch on that in this little overview, I believe, as well. It's really well documented in these three, going through government, what's called the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, which documents actually a system that will blow your mind if you believe that you live in a free country and that you have a representative government. So it's not conspiracy theory, if I'm going to borrow the words of Ezra Taft Benson. When he said that to us, he was referencing the Book of Mormon and prophecies in it toward our day, as well as these secret combinations he was speaking of, or that are spoken of in the Book of Mormon and in the 5th chapter of the Book of Moses that we find in the Pearl of Great Price, both provided to us via Joseph Smith Jr. So the other thing I'm going to get into here is there's a section that I'll let play pretty much, which is going to show Gordon B. Hinckley in action using some pretty high-powered persuasion technologies on us in General Conference. And I'm going to in that video I kind of break down what he's doing there, because he really pulls some he pulls some maneuvers that are they're really something. And so it's important to be able to recognize this sort of thing. And when I first saw this occurring, of course, it was a shock to me. So stay tuned. I know there are people of all sorts of different experiences in life, and yet you'll naturally be, not just naturally be prejudiced towards certain areas of this possibly, although we're gonna see a lot of what's actually in here, so that you'll probably want to take a closer look and invest some time, because you'll get a lot more out of here than you ever got at conference, I guarantee. And you'll learn things about conference you didn't know either. So anyway, let me get started. Let's cruise through this and see what we can discover. First off, let's just jump in here. I know that might be a lot to kind of swallow here. All right. So here's where the video starts off. The first video. And if you're not familiar with any of these sort of things, if you're faithful LDS, of course you've read about secret combinations in the Book of Mormon, and that we're supposed to have secret combinations in the last days that are supposed to be destroying the freedom of all nations and people. So we find that in Ether chapter 8. And so this was something that I was really into studying even before I joined the church as a youth.
Actually, was studying that led me into the church, and I mentioned that here. So I'm not going to get real deep into my story on that particular aspect, but when you hear people talking about the New World Order, if you've listened to the media enough, you're basically mind control programmed enough to say, oh, that's just some conspiracy theorist, wacko, right-wing nut job. That's what you're supposed to react as, just like you're supposed to react with abhorrence to anyone who has noted that the brethren aren't actually what they seem to be. Then you're labeled as an anti-Mormon, an apostate, all sorts of, or even just a critic. And there's always a negative connotation, which is designed to shut you down mentally in terms of examining what is being presented. We're programmed to shut down on anything that violates our belief system. And so mind control is used throughout our society so much more than most people have any idea. All right, so I'll also take a few moments and show these world leaders talking about the New World Order, and we'll have several U.S. presidents and so forth. And we got Brent Scowcroft here, comes up here in ISGS, and like the top 10 in the world for networked in a bunch of these NGOs. There's David Rockefeller, Bill Clinton. These guys are all networked in various non-government organizations who are always headed by people who are higher in secretive and secret societies, like the Bilderberg Group, the Committee of 300, and most of them are high-ranking Freemasons. They could be in the Golden Dawn or, all kinds of other of these organizations that do, it's very documentable. So we show some of that, and Brother Brent Scowcroft has been like, national security advisor and all that sort of a thing, and involved with Henry Kissinger as a business partner, who's the top guy on the list there, and involved with, Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission and Aspen Strategy Group, etc. So there's Gord B. Hinckley, and we're really going to get into his talk there, and I'm going to dissect it. Well, I've already done that, so I'm just probably going to play that part, and maybe I'll eat something while that's happening. Here we show some of the occult nature of this group of people. All kinds of these guys. There's Obama, and they're all using, hand signals and Freemasonic grips and things that will be pretty interesting. The occult is heavily involved. There's a Federal Reserve building named after Mariner Eccles, an LDS gentleman there. He was a Fed chairman in 1933. If you know anything about 1933, it's 20 years after the privately owned Fed Bank bankrupted the United States, and through Roosevelt stole the gold from all the people. And that building's named after Eccles because he helped engineer all that. So here we show a lot of secretive stuff. There's a bit on the World Council of Churches, Skull and Bones. The Bush is in it for 3 generations. And we talk about secret combinations, or you're seeing some things where these secretive societies are heavily involved at the head of politics, religion, banking, business, and of course the entertainment industry. And look at what they're flashing there. Yeah, so anyway, there's Hillary Clinton at the Council on Foreign Relations building giving a speech, and we'll probably try to hit that. That's just, it's just about a minute or so, but she expresses her loyalties, which are basically treasonous there. Where was that? The Methodist thing. General Conference, all churches, all the 501c3, corporations that are businesses that are called churches have the General Conference as a matter of corporate requirement for get into watching the buildings fall straight down there. I put a lot of work into this, a lot of pictures and so forth, and there's, you know, there's Joel Osteen flashing some stuff, Bush and Thomas, Gordon Hinckley, Brigham Young, yeah, Queen. So I document a lot of things in here, and the corporate governance is just amazing. And so this gentleman that put together a video called Corporation Nation, it's about a 3-hour and 13-minute video, I guess, and I've got excerpts out of that really, you know, I think the highlights of his presentation, you know, a fair amount are in here, and you may want to see the rest of his, because it goes over the, I show plenty in these as far as financial reports go, the investment of all our, you know, privately owned municipalities, which everyone thinks of as publicly owned, but they're actually transnational, privately owned businesses, corporations that are invested all over the world on these lists of investments that, you know, like the city of San Diego or Miami or the state of, you know, Florida, or you know, the county of LA own as private businesses, or CalPERS, CalSTRS, you know, these pension funds that they're invested in. Florida here we show you know, a couple pages that go through out of their 1,400 pages of, you know, with 40 particular investments, all in the, you know, most in the, well, many of them in the millions, or even sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars in various business enterprises all over the world. That's a lot of, that's 50,000 investments right there, just in the, you know, I think that's just the state government of Florida. So within the United States, between the United States, the states, the counties, the cities, and the other municipalities, we've got 185,000 corporations that are posing as publicly owned government bodies that actually own well over $100 trillion worth of investment in Fortune 500 companies, as well as foreign companies. And the church, the LDS church, is kind of like a microcosm of this. Of course, it's a corporate empire, and the church has got its own investments. It's, you know, for-profit business empire, but on top of that, we've got, you know, the corporation of the president, and there are shares, and there are preferred shares in these corporations. And by the way, these shown here are only the publicly traded corporations, that all of these, which seem to operate as a united network as a voting bloc through their stock ownership in determining corporate policy and electing boards of governors. So the amount of power that's wielded is just incredible. And of course, what they also own but don't show on here are shares of privately held corporations, such as churches. So we can't see who owns the Methodist, you know, the Methodist Episcopal Church, or the First Baptist Church, or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. You know, we the Seventh-day Adventists, whatever. We can't see who owns these various shares, and especially the preferred shares with much higher, you know, voting percentage, and determine corporate policy, which determines theology. Of course, that doesn't happen in the one true church. Of course, there are several that say that they are the one true church. The Watchtower says that, and they have a lot in common, which we've shown also in the I've shown in the mind control videos. So this is going to show some coercive persuasion being utilized, but this aspect just shows absolute you know, documentation in an area that most people would never see, and they wouldn't, you know, even if they did find, you know, the right pages to look at in these enormous reports, people just don't look at these. And it's not very well known. But the power of it is truly amazing. So let's I'm going to back in here to a different version of this, a different aspect of this particular program, just because it allows me to be a lot more accurate as to where I am, even though it's going to shrink your picture a little bit here, for at least for the moment. And I'm going to show a few things here. All right, here's I'm going to have George Bush Sr. there, and we're going to see a few of these folks talking about things here, using terminology like the New World Order or the New Order of the Ages. And these are people who are involved in Freemasonry, Skull and Bones, that sort of thing, and are well-recognized public officials generally, or huge business leaders. So, in case you think it's something that some wacko right-wing nutjob made up, let's see what the President of the United States has to say. See if I can get the volume on here. That ought to be about enough. Alright, let's roll a few clips here.
Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, can emerge. 100 generations have searched for this elusive path to peace, while 1,000 wars raged across the span of human endeavor. Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order. A world where the United Nations is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders, global governance.
Never before has a new world order had to be assembled from so many different perceptions.
Good evening, everybody. President Obama and British Prime Minister Gordon today calling for a new world order to tackle our global economic crisis. We've got to give them a stake in creating the kind of world order that I think all of us would like to hold.
And this present window of opportunity during which
This is David Rockefeller.
an interdependent world order might be built will not be here for too long. When our founders declared a new order of the ages, they were acting on an ancient hope that is meant to be fulfilled. And after 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order, and instead it looks like we got a lot of this.
So for those of you who are not familiar with various NGOs that are engineering a new world order, there are maybe 1,300 that would be listed on the particular website that I'm tuned in here right now. And we've got the superclass 400, the people basically most connected with various NGOs, non-government organizations, in other words, non-elected people that form world policy, are comprised of these various people. And so Henry Kissinger seems to be connected to more than anyone else. And if you look just down the list a little bit, we've got Brent Scowcroft. That's Elder Brent Scowcroft from the church, General Brent Scowcroft, and we're going to have a little section on him. And so when we take a look at in here you see names, Rockefellers and Soros and just these massive globalists here, Zygmunt Brzezinski. And if we take a quick look over at Brent Scowcroft's page on Wikipedia, we can see that even right there, he's listed as being involved with the Aspen Strategy Group, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, just the Atlantic Council, various NGOs whose goals are to submerge the United States into a global government, basically to abandon the sovereignty of the United States into a global government, into a new world order. And we're going to hear him say that multiple times in a speech at BYU to the graduating class. And in case you've associated these things with somebody who's with things that are not true or conspiracy theory, we will listen to political leaders, to global leaders declaring this themselves, as we've heard George Bush Sr., George Bush Jr., William Jefferson Clinton, David Rockefeller all declare and Obama in a little clip I played right at the beginning. So it's not like it's a big secret. It's just that what we'll see is after Ezra Taft Benson passed away, and we've got Gordon B. Hinckley running the show, we have numerous people from the Council on Foreign Relations having free access to the young folks at BYU. You're going to have speakers such as Brent Scowcroft, who, yes, is a prominent member of the church, CFR, Trilaterals, Bohemian Grove guy, absolutely horrendous rap sheet as far as being involved with these, what would the Book of Mormon and President Benson would have called secret accommodations. Or you've got Zygmunt Brzezinski, Dick Cheney, these people being honored by LDS presidents at BYU, which is now recruiting grounds, essentially, for the CIA, the NSA, and the FBI, where these people are serving within the companies, actually privately owned corporations that we think of as government bodies, and functioning to bring to pass what is warned about in the Book of Mormon. So we're going to look at factual evidence that supports this, and you can determine whether or not you think it's some nutty conspiracy theory or if it's conspiracy fact, as President Benson said. What we will see is absolute cooperation on the part of LDS church presidents currently, or at least Hinckley and Monson, with the people that are working to destroy the sovereignty of the United States. Not to mention creating wars which cost a lot of lives, bring a lot of profit to the companies these men are involved with, and murder people on a wholesale basis. And we'll find President Hinckley supporting that. Like I said, if you think that sounds rash, just watch the evidence here. You can watch Hinckley in action. Go. Here's Gordon B. Hinckley. Oh my gosh, hopefully I didn't offend any TBMs out there thinking this guy is a holy man. Well, I'll tell you what, the Bible says prove all things. You're supposed to believe that the Bible is pretty much scripture, especially if it's an area that Joseph Smith didn't bother to correct in the JST, right? Prove all things, hold fast to that which is true. Okay? Well, truth should be able to stand in the light, shouldn't it? I mean, shouldn't it? Haven't we heard that kind of thing from J. Reuben Clark, or even Gordon B. Hinckley said our history is an open book? But why do we see all these obfuscation techniques, all this NLP and hypnotic language and all these mind control techniques being used upon us in the church environment? Why do we see that? Why do we have the same problems that the Jehovah's Witnesses have? Maybe not on the same scale or as covertly in some aspects of the religion, but if ever... Overtly is what I should have said there, so far as the J-dubs are concerned, with a lot of their coercive persuasion and or mind control. Alright, let's skip ahead here and take a peek what we got here with Tommy Monson and George Bush exchanging a grip that ought to be somewhat interesting here.
Mass murder, incinerating people 10 times faster than Hitler ever thought of doing it, and doing it in the Middle East. Yep. So there he is, shaking hands with Dick Cheney, former, was he CEO, president of Halliburton?
Timing was off there.
Halliburton profited awfully well off of that war, didn't they? And it's still going.
So we're looking
Hey,
at
what kind of a handshake is this?
Bush and Monson.
Tommy Monson and George Bush. Does that look a little bit familiar to some people? Well, there we go again. Should we get a close-up? My oh my, what's going on there? That looks pretty familiar. Not completely familiar, but pretty familiar. So this says it's a Freemasonic handshake. Did you know Thomas Monson was a Freemason? I haven't heard him mention it in General Conference, but he and Georgie Boy there look like they got some kind of a special friendship there.
I'll just apologize that I had some difficulty with the software, and so the timing was off there. When I was talking about Monson, we're looking at Hinckley, and when we're talking about Hinckley, we're looking at Monson. So that's part of the reason I'm going live with this right now, because I actually wasn't able to even produce this as a file. So I had to go Mobizen Live when I did this, and that's what I'm using here. So it's not a studio production, people, but I'm trying to do the best I can. So I hope it's turning out all right.
Maybe we should get a little closer look at handshake Gordy had going on there. Well, look where Dick's finger is. Why are they shaking hands so funny? Do people normally do that? They wouldn't be Freemasons, would they? Oh, we know the George. Oh, so when we're talking about Anton LaVey or his mentor, Aleister Crowley, yeah, they're both high-degree Freemasons, just in case you wondered. Crowley was known as the most wicked man on earth.
This is LaVey.
Nice to know
This is
how
Crowley.
Satanists are well accepted within Freemasonry. You'd think. Panorama. Birds of a feather flocking together. The Leahona. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. There's a lot to this. Magic, Masonry, mind control, and Mormonism as a microcosm of our world. Here's Building 7 coming down. That's demolition. That's a no-brainer. The Twin Towers are demolition. It's not rocket science.
Pause that and take a look at that. Building 7, the Lehman Brothers building, was not so highly publicized by the government agencies. As we can see, it is coming down just the way the others did, demolition style. It was never hit by any airplanes. Never hit by any airplanes. And you see how it just comes down, just free fall, imploding. And that's what happens when you blow out the steel support structures. It eliminates the resistance and it goes straight down. This is the way demolition works. Demolition charges were obviously in these buildings, meaning it was an inside job. The best speech Bush ever gave. He had a long time to prepare it. He was ready for once in his life to give a speech. When they caught him impromptu later and said, "President Bush, what can you tell us about the World Trade Center?" And he didn't have a teleprompter, and he said something like this: Well, it was wrong and it was illegal. And when I heard that, I said, "And that's the President of the United States?" Anyway, yeah, the whole thing's horrifying, but this was used as an excuse to wage the war in the Middle East. And now we're going to watch the Amalekites upon the towers here, specifically, as we heard in the Book of Mormon, the Amalekites were used by the Lamanite leaders to convince the Nephites to go to war. The Lamanites to go to war with the Nephites when they did not want to. In other words, they used mind control. They used influence of the media. There's a Masonic grip in front of Masonic symbols. Is that the Pope and British Prime Minister at the time? Was it Gordon? Alrighty. So let's cruise through here a little bit, and then we're going to watch Gordon. There's one of our illustrious cities here. This guy's getting into the financial reports. That part is really interesting. When you hear the words financial reports, you might think boring, but no, it's not. It's not like it's not like an accounting class or something. Okay, here they're just mentioning, the transnational corporate nature, business, investment, banking nature of, CalSTRS, CalPERS, his pension funds, and you thought they were something else. They're like a mini HSBC. Okay. So much is so different than what I thought. I mean, I had learned a lot about the secret societies and the secretive societies and the NGOs and the way things operate with banking and so forth, but I did not know about corporate governance. I didn't know that all these were, privately owned businesses. Our armies and navies, popes and priests that reign with blood and horror on this earth are privately owned corporations. United Methodist Church, there's where they start talking about General Conference, and that's about where we're going to take up here. We'll get into some Gordon B. Hinckley action. There will be a little bit where the audio's not at its very best with Gordon B. Hinckley, and then that'll change and we'll have better audio. It's not totally bad, but it's not as good as I'd like it. Okay. This is part of that presentation that the other gentleman's doing. Let's roll on it.
Which is indeed a for-profit corporation, with each of
Here we go.
investors for almost 20 years. There's that word again, collected. For instance, all individual Methodist churches pay the main corporate church, which is indeed a for-profit corporation, with each of their individual 501c3 houses of worship across the country and the world acting as their non-profit branches. This is why all denominations hold general conferences. They are nothing but giant corporate budget meetings. In this way, churches can be regulated by the state.
Let's see what Gordon B. Hinckley, the prophet of the Lord, has to say about war situations in his time. See.
Those of us who are American citizens stand solemnly with the President of our nation. The terrible forces of evil must be confronted and held accountable for their actions. Not such groups. The Book of Mormon speaks of the Gadianton, vicious, old-mouthed, secret organization bent on evil and destruction. No one knows how long it will last. No one knows precisely where it will be fought. No one knows what it may entail before it is over. We've launched an undertaking of size and nature of which we cannot see at this time. Occasions of this kind
Now more than ever, as the families in the Middle East and elsewhere brace against the bombs of the American war machine, God needs to be communicating with his prophets to cry out against these modern Gadiantons and proclaim peace to the world, freedom from this wickedness. But instead, ministers of all faiths promote war. They stand as Amalekites upon the towers. In the name of patriotism, liberty, and freedom, they support war efforts and call the people to obey their wicked leaders, as the Amalekites did to the Lamanites who attacked the innocent Nephites in the Book of Mormon. And even now, as the bombs are falling in the Middle East, we ask, where's the prophet of the Lord? Gordon B. Hinckley, art thou a prophet?
I don't know what the future holds. I do not know what the future holds. much to be the case presently.
So, Gordon is starting off quickly here. First he goes in with the warm-up business there about patriotism and somebody not hesitating to serve their country after all that time and to be loyal and head into the Middle East because duty calls. And he starts talking about empires of repression who have victimized others, such as the Ottoman Empire and the British Empire, of which the United States is actually a part, despite what they may have taught you in school. So now he says tyrants have arisen who have repressed their own people. Oh no, the United States will come to the rescue. I suppose that Saddam Hussein is a lousy ruler like many others are, but somehow we're going to justify attacking them based on what? Somehow we're going to tie this into the planes hitting the towers in New York? Are there any Iraqis there? No. Anyone representing the Iraqi military or government? No. Saudi Arabians? That's what they say. Are we going to attack Saudi Arabia? I don't think so. They're like the 51st state. You gotta be kidding me. So, even though the buildings came down, you know, demolition style, all three of them, when two got hit by planes that had no capability of instantaneously and simultaneously melting every steel support in the buildings, that they free fell straight down to the ground, exactly the way they do when the demolition charges are placed. Yeah, people actually thought the planes brought them down. Somebody did. I don't know who. Somebody did. Beyond any ability to comprehend scientifically, but people will believe just about anything on television these days. So here we go. Gordon's already creating some false associations here to excuse what he's going to introduce as A-OK with God.
I'm just going to warn that my phone memory is running out. I'm not going to be editing, so the video may end abruptly. At this point, I'm just cruising along here, taking a look at this previously done video.
Consequently, great and terrifying forces with sophisticated and fearsome armaments have been engaged in battle. Many of our own church members have been involved in this conflict. We have seen on television and in the press cheerful children clinging to their fathers in uniform going to the battlefront. In a touching letter I received just this week, a mother wrote of her Marine son who's serving for the second time in a Middle Eastern war. She says that at the time of his first deployment,